Welcome to the Opinionation Podcast, where free speech, opinions, and original thought still matter in America.
Welcome, everyone. It is I, King Daddy, back for another episode of the Opinionation Podcast today. I would first like to just thank everyone who is a follower, a listener, a friend of the show, a fan, whatever you may be, for allowing us to come here weekly and deliver this show to you. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. Our listenership is growing leaps and bounds daily, and it's all because of you. I'm sure some of it has to do with me as well, but I would just be another blowhard talking to himself if it were not for you people. So thank you very much. On a sad note, yesterday, when I cut on the evening news, there was an event that took place at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte where they had an active shooter on the campus. Now, according to the news reports, this active shooter took the Blue Line Railway to the campus, exited the railway with a gun, made his way to one of the buildings, I believe it was the Kennedy building, on the campus, went in where he commenced to shooting, killing 2 people and wounding 4. Nothing like that has ever happened here before. We've had shootings in high schools that were one-on-one events, but we've never had an active shooter such as this person who went into this building and just started randomly shooting. Now, at one time, this young man, who I will not mention his name, but this young man, or young murderer, used to be a student at UNCC, but again, according to the news media, he was no longer enrolled, or as one report said, he was enrolled in one class, but that was all. Goes into this building, takes out his gun, and commences to shooting, again killing 2, wounding 4. I have not heard anything mentioned at the time of this recording whether or not he has given any type of reasoning behind what he has done or any motivation as to whether or not there may have been some bullying or anything. So we don't know. I'm sure there'd be a lot of speculation before the facts actually come out. But what I want to talk about today is the fact that, one, he walks onto this campus with a weapon, and the campus is one of those gun-free zones. But what really bothers me about the gun-free zone, and I'm not one of these people that thinks that everybody should be going around carrying a gun, although I believe that everybody has the right to do that. But gun-free zones are dangerous because criminals, and let me repeat this, criminals, lawbreakers, people who do not do the right thing will not obey a sign that says gun-free zone. So when they walk onto a campus such as this, to a gun-free zone area, everybody there is a sitting duck for this piece of shit to shoot at them at will. Because it is a gun-free zone, and he being either a psychopath, a sociopath, just plain crazy in some other way, vindictive towards someone who did something to him, don't know what the reasoning was, but he at that particular moment was a lawbreaker, and he's not going to adhere to a sign on the window that says that this is a gun-free zone. But do not be mistaken that when you turn on your news in the next few days, if it's not already airing on there already, because this did make national news. It was on Good Morning America this morning. It was in my Fox feed on my phone last night. This is a national news story, and it will be twisted to use for the gun control lobbyist to say that we need to do something about the guns. But again, let me bring up the fact that a lawbreaker, most of the time, there are exceptions to every rule, but most of the time, a lawbreaker is not going to purchase a weapon through the proper channels. They're going to buy them on the street. They're going to be untraceable usually. Now, there have been cases where people have used their own guns and they were registered, and that is a whole different animal. But they're going to use a story like this to perpetuate gun control legislation again. The news media will pad the numbers, and they will talk about this as if school shootings and events of this manner are so prevalent in the United States of America that something has to be done about it, and it needs to be done immediately. But what they don't talk about as often as they should are the amount of people who get killed in the general public. Not a school shooting situation, but a one-on-one situation or a domestic situation where violence ensues and somebody loses their life. Had another case, again in Charlotte, just this week, where somebody got into a fight with a supposed, well, I don't guess you could really call them a friend, but got into a fight with this person who was supposedly their friend for a while. And they killed them with a knife. So now are we supposed to have kitchen knife legislation? Because they go into the kitchen and get a butcher knife and kill their friend. They end up in a fight. Both of them get injured and the friend dies in the fight. Are we now going to start blaming the weapons for the destruction that they cause? We're not blaming the people. It's like the whole scenario that I mentioned on the show, I believe it was week before last, where the guy in the Burger King parking lot was told to drop his gun 17 times and did not drop the gun, and the police ended up having to shoot him, and he died from his wound. And now they are all over the news media trying to blame the police for this guy's death. He had a gun, he wouldn't drop it, the police blew his ass away, and now all of a sudden it's the police's fault. So everybody wants to blame something that is not to blame for the problems that are taking place out there. You want to blame a gun because somebody is a crazy son of a bitch and wants to run around killing people with it. I know people who own 10 to 15 guns and have never even threatened to shoot anyone unless it was in passing, saying what they would do if someone broke in their home. But yet they own guns. Several. Pistols, rifles, shotguns, several. Have never harmed another human being. I have also never known a gun to leap out of the gun safe and shoot up everybody in the house because the gun went crazy. Never known that to happen. Don't believe it's possible. Really, really sure it's not possible. But every single time something like this happens in America, everything gets blamed except for where the blame needs to lie, and that is with the person who committed the crime, not the weapon. Now, everybody in the next few weeks is going to be talking about gun legislation. They are not going to be talking about this animal who walked into a school and killed 2 college students, wounding another 4 college students. They're not going to be talking about that. They're going to be talking about the evils of guns. If you cannot walk into a gun shop or a pawn shop and purchase a gun, if you want to bad enough harm someone or use a gun or any type of weapon for inappropriate means, you do not have to buy it from a gun shop or a pawn shop. You can find somebody on the streets who has a stolen one that they will gladly sell you, serial number free. But they never talk about that. They want to talk about legislating what we have the right to own for the personal protection of ourselves. They want to punish the law-abiding citizen for the actions of crazy people. That is how things are done in this country. We have freedoms that have been given to us in the Second Amendment to arm ourselves, but every time some unbalanced individual becomes unhinged and kills somebody, he's not to blame, she's not to blame, but that goddamn gun is horrible. We got to get rid of that gun. We've got to pass some kind of a bill to get rid of that gun. And all that is, people, is our government that is entirely too large and has way too much power, once again trying to regulate something that we have the right to have on our possession. They want to limit our speech. They want to limit our right to bear arms. What are they going to take away from you next and blame it on something else? You know, I always used to hear when I was working in the school system in the hospital years ago that every rule has somebody's name attached to it. Every rule. So we used to have a rule at the school that said that you couldn't let kids out of the classroom without having a hall pass. That's very understandable, I guess, to a degree. But if you can't trust somebody to go 3 doors down and go to the bathroom and come right back, that kid has a problem. But they used to have this rule, and it was called Marty's Rule. Because there was a kid somewhere in the early 80s or late 70s named Marty, who when teachers would let him out of the classroom to go to the bathroom, he wouldn't come back. So the hall pass came into existence, and they would laugh about it and call it Marty's Rule, because one dumbass kid, and this could be a folktale, I don't know, but one dumbass kid broke the rules, creating a standard of having to have a hall pass to go to the bathroom, and they called it Marty's Rule. That was that particular school that I was working at. Marty's Rule was their rule. But what I'm trying to say here is everything that happens in this country negatively, the negativity and the stigma of the negativity should be on the person that did it, not the weapon that they chose to use. You know, the cavemen used to kill people with sticks and clubs. The ancient warrior fighters would use swords, slingshots, all different types of homemade weaponry. They didn't have guns and still managed to kill. All a gun is a new example of what you can use to perpetrate violence. Killing is old. Killing is as old as the earth itself. You know, the old Bible story, Cain killed Abel, I believe, with a rock. He didn't have an AK-47 or a pistol. He killed him with a rock. So, does the weapon of choice really make that big a difference? The Charles Manson family, if you want to call that crazy, fucked up bunch of family, the Charles Manson family's weapons of choice were stabbing, knives. They didn't use guns. They killed their victims by stabbing them to death. They tied them up. I believe it was Sharon Tate, who was pregnant, by the way, was tied up with a lamp cord and stabbed repeatedly with a knife. So does your weapon of choice really matter? Because here's the deal. The common denominator in all of this is not the gun or the weapon. It is the lunatic behind the crime. All of these scenarios, from Charles Manson to that rebel flag waving Dylan Ruth kid who walked in that AME Zion church and killed those parishioners, to the Columbine killers, to this boy that killed those 2 people and wounded the 4 people at UNCC yesterday. The common denominator is not what they chose to kill with. It was the fact that their fucked up mind gave them the thought to go in and take the life of another human being that they had no right to take. They weren't defending themselves. They weren't protecting their family. They made a decision in a warped mindset that they were going to go and that they were going to kill people. And they did. The common denominator is not the weapon. The common denominator is the psychology of the psychopath. The weapon is a tool. It's just like today. I had to put a screw into my mailbox lid because some asshole apparently decided to knock my mailbox with something and knock the lid off. Now, luckily, they didn't break it badly, and I was able to put the hinge back on, but I needed to put a screw in either side of the mailbox. Now, I could have chosen a hammer, or I could have chosen a screwdriver, because either one of those would have really worked, because I could have tapped these little clips in versus the screw that I put in. But the bottom line is, the screwdriver was the tool that I chose to do the job. I'm the one who made the decision to walk to the mailbox and fix it. The mailbox did not fix itself. The screwdriver did not make the decision to roll down the driveway and jump up on the mailbox and fix the lid, because it is a tool, and the tool only does what my mind and my hand makes it do. A rock is a tool. A knife is a tool. A gun is a tool. All 3 can be used to kill another person, but before it can do so, there has to be a person who is in control of the thought that makes the weapon do what it is designed to do. It does not kill on its own. So that individual yesterday was just crazy. The gun is innocent. They can debate this all they want to. They can get on television and they can have congressional hearings. They can have press conferences. They can have everybody from every school on the planet standing on national television and screaming about how we need to change our gun laws. And still, not one time is a gun in a gun safe or lying on a counter or leaned up against the wall going to just jump up and start killing people on its own. The trigger has to be pulled by someone. So there is your problem. Your problem is the perpetrator of violence. Because that person is disturbed, unbalanced, whatever it is that you want to call them. But the weapon that they chose was just that, the weapon that they chose. So before we get all over the television screaming and hyping about gun control laws, and I'm the first to tell you, I do believe that there needs to be some gun control laws. For example, I don't believe that a 12-year-old should be able to walk into a pawn shop and say, hey, I want a pistol. Nor do I believe that someone should be able to walk into a gun shop and say, hey, I want a pistol or a rifle, and just give them $100 and you walk out of there with a gun with no form of background check. But to limit the American people and the citizens of this country who do not break the law and spend every single day doing exactly what they are supposed to do, do not do anything to thwart those people from having their rights met. Just like freedom of speech, the right to bear arms is our right. This is King Daddy for the Opinionation Podcast. You can reach us by email at opinionation84@gmail.com, or you can reach us at Twitter or Instagram at opinionation84. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. Have a wonderful week.